TJ here, everyone. And yes, that is me. As a child, I was always interested in joining the military, and when I grew up, I went into the Army. And for those who are wondering, that is a toy rifle at right shoulder arms. 24 August 1982. I report to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for 8 weeks of basic training. 26 October 1982. I report to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, where I become a ground surveillance radar operator. My job as a ground surveillance operator, we call it GSR for short, was classified as part of the Military Intelligence Corps. Fort Huachuca has an assortment of schools dealing with military intelligence and signal. Here you have the military intelligence insignia. 6 January 1983. I report to Germany for a 2-year tour. I would later extend a 3rd year, making it 3 full years that I was out of the United States. My unit was Bravo Company, 108th Military Intelligence Battalion, 8th Infantry Division, mechanized. Upon my arrival, my unit was assigned to a large installation by the name of Baumholder. After a few short months in country, my entire battalion would be redeployed forward to a small base called Wildflicken. Wildflicken, being 10 kilometers straight line distance from East Germany, would enable us to better surveil into East Germany. Here we have one of 2 different types of ground surveillance radars that we would use. This radar had the capability of providing us the exact direction and distance to our target. Given our equipment and training, we would be assigned multiple surveillance missions along the East German border. When we weren't on the border doing surveillance, we would conduct real-world battle reconnaissance and training missions. We spent a lot of time in those armored personnel carriers. We used to refer to them as our own recreational vehicle. Here I am, Reforger, summer of 1983. Yeah, and this was a fun one. Winter, Reforger, 1985. Here I am, a young PFC getting ready to go on border patrol. Whenever you came within a kilometer of East Germany, you would see one of these signs. We used to call it the 1K zone. Here I am on another border patrol mission, writing a letter home. The OPs, this is what a typical OP would look like. And here you have the white pole with a blue stripe. This is where East and West Germany touched. Here's a picture looking east into East Germany. Off in the distance, you see an East German tower. Here we're on a border patrol, Jeep patrol, and you can see just how close we're driving to those white poles. And here's another picture of an OP. And to the left of the white tower on top, you can see one of our ground surveillance radars. And then to the right of the OP tower is a tripod for a tow gun. February 1986, I report to Fort Ord, Bravo Company, 107th Military Intelligence Battalion, 7th Infantry Division Light. That's a fancy way of saying we were straight leg. It would be at Fort Ord that I would re-enlist for another 3-year enlistment. That's me on the left, and this was a really fun day. We were at the rappel tower, and that was something I learned how to do when stationed at Fort Ord. Here I am at the top of the tower getting ready to come down, and there I am rappelling down the side of the tower. Here I am getting ready to come down Australian, and here's some of the guys coming down Australian. And when you do Australian, you literally have to run down the wall. That's how you do Australian. While stationed at Fort Ord, I was sent to Panama for jungle school. That's me on the left. And that was at Fort Sherman in the Panama Canal Zone. Here I am at Hunter Liggett with my platoon. We're on a training mission. That's me standing in the back, second from the tree with the boonie hat on. Don't know if you can make me out. October 1986, I report to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and become a forward observer for the field artillery. This is the insignia of artillery, crossed cannons. January of 1987, I report to Fort Lewis. I am assigned to 611 Field Artillery, 9th Infantry Division, motorized. In the summer of 1988, 2nd Brigade disbands. I am reassigned to 111 Field Artillery and remain in that unit until 4 June 1989 when I ETS from the United States Army. As a forward observer, my job would be to call for and adjust artillery rounds as they would impact. Here I am with my squad. I am to the lower left. And the story on this particular photo is the artillery guns would be to our rear, firing over our heads into the impact area. We were therefore made to dig in and construct a bunker, and we would later come to call ourselves the Rebels of 6-1 Fist, a collection of goofballs and misfits. In the summer of 1987, I would achieve my goal of making Sergeant E5. I call this my GQ photo. I'm at NTC going through desert training. It's Easter morning, 1989, and I'm getting rained on, if you can imagine, being in the desert, cold, and getting rained on. Here I have a picture of a fellow team leader and we're just striking the pose out in the desert. In this photo, our desert training is coming to an end. We're getting ready to go back home, and a few short weeks later, I would ETS and be honorably discharged from the United States Army. June of 1989 through June of 1990, I would remain in the Michigan National Guard. I was assigned to HHB, 1st of the 182nd Field Artillery. It was an 8-inch self-propelled howitzer unit. That unit no longer exists, and as you can tell by this photo, this building is currently unoccupied. Here's the insignia for infantry. In September of 1999, 10 years after I ETS'd from the United States Army, I met up with a Michigan National Guard recruiter at a local gun show. At the age of 40, I would return to the Michigan National Guard, going infantry. The unit I was assigned to was Alpha Company, 1st of the 125th Infantry Mechanized. We would do training at facilities such as Fort Custer near Jackson, Michigan, and at Camp Grayling, located near the center of the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. Surrounding states would also send their National Guard units here to Grayling for training. Even some Canadian units would take advantage of these training facilities. Here is my squad. I can be seen in the first row, lower right. In the summer of 2000, we did our 2-week annual training in Norway at an installation called Evje Moon. Here you can see me with a Norwegian soldier. Summer of 2001, Selfridge Air National Guard Base would put on a Vietnam-era reenactment. Our unit participated in this reenactment. As I reflect on my military experiences, I feel fortunate that I was able to experience a wide array of various disciplines: armor, straight leg infantry, motorized, in which I got to ride around in a hardtop Humvee. I think of all the places I got to see and things I got to do, and I wouldn't change it if I had to do it all over again. This is one of my favorite pictures, Mount Rainier in the background. Over my left shoulder, And yeah, that's about a 200-foot drop right behind me. Another of my favorite photographs. Me standing in front of the Pacific Ocean. I often reflect on the words that were shared with me in August of 1988. It is true there are those who march to the beat of a different drum, and still fewer men who take the path least chosen. But rare indeed is the man who sounds his own drum beat and clears his own path. Lieutenant James Keith Pender, August 1988, Yellowstone.